Hey there, everybody. Thank you so much for hanging out, swinging by, and chilling with us today on Todd-versations. We're thrilled you're here. We have an amazing topic we're going to talk about today with an amazing guest. This is something that I think we need to get a lot closer to our heart, and we need to elevate this conversation. It's a topic of bees. It's a topic of honey. It's a topic about the global environment that honey lives in. We're going to tackle a whole bunch of subjects today. I've got an expert here that's building a brand that is the coolest thing cooking out there today. I'm so stoked that he's here with us. Please, everybody give it up for the founder of Pass the Honey, Douglas Raggio. Dude, welcome.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm thrilled you're here, man.
Hell of an intro.
I try. You know what? If I open up big and I fail, hey, you got something out of it in the beginning. You'll remember that, right? This is such an amazing topic. You know, you and I have connected and talked about some different ideas and back and forth a little bit. And you know, it got me a little bit more involved. And we were talking about this morning before we started recording the show. It's like, you know, I think the vast majority of people probably have a toe in the water. Maybe, like I said, the first or second step of the pool, but I don't think we're as deep in the water as we need to be about understanding the issue of bees and what it means on a global scale. We're going to talk about that a little bit. But before we do that, we get into kind of who you are and what's going on with Pass the Honey. I want to give people some idea of the magnitude of the issue that we have on a global scale. And according to the Dorset Wildlife Trust, reports that 41% of insects are threatened with extinction today. Insect extinction, you cannot say that fast 3 times either, is happening 8 times faster than vertebrates on this planet. Without insects, we're screwed. I mean, it is a major, major topic of concern and consideration. So I'm excited to have you here today. I'm excited to get into this. I know we're going to have a great conversation. And again, I love what you guys are doing and what you're about and why you're doing it. So before we get going, though, would you give everybody just a quick little bio and a little intro to who you are and, you know, how I roped you into hanging out today?
Hardly roped. Name's Douglas Raggio. I'm the founder of Pass the Honey. I've been in food and bev, predominantly the consumer packaged side for almost a decade and a half. And just now in the last 6 to 8 months, getting my bearings in produce, it took me a while to realize that we're a commodity as honeycomb. We're a cut pack operation. We're not a processed liquid, or we're not a processed bar. So yeah, it's a fundamental shift in thinking, and it makes sense with the supply chain work we do and the sourcing strategy and the testing we have to do. And yeah, I'm bringing everything I've done in my past, from PR and marketing to athlete management to talent representation to owning a superfoods company to running a venture fund in food and bev to running a private equity group in food and bev. And now we're playing in, really tackling global honey fraud.
Yeah.
Bringing it to an unadulterated format to consumers.
Well, and that's the topic I'm going to get into. We're going to get into deep in that because I don't think people are going to realize how big fraud is in the honey business today. It is staggering when we get into, people are going to be floored by this, staggering for people to realize. And America has a love for honey. I mean, if you take a look at what honey sales have done over the past 20 years, what America loves honey, the world loves honey. It is super unfortunate.
Honey consumption is 4-fold, and honey production is declining at 20% annually, which is where that delta is fraud.
Correct. In fact, when you look at that, I was looking, and it's like the overall honey production has dropped 126 million pounds over the last year, according to research. And what's interesting is that, in 1 year. And what's interesting is that the result of the drop in honey yield per colony is the same number of bees are just significantly producing less honey at the same time. And the bees are dying even at a faster rate. It's a really scary thing. So I want to get into all that. I'm going to go deep because this is such a fascinating topic. And more importantly, your product, when people try this, they're going to be blown away. This stuff is like a staple in the house. I love this stuff. It's addicting as all.
Let me run something by you real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
Liquid honey is the 3rd most fraudulent food on the planet.
Yeah, it is.
70% of all liquid honey at retail has been adulterated. It doesn't even contain pollen. So when you taste honey in a honeycomb, there's a chance that most Americans have never tasted real honey.
100%
that much fraud, which is where we get comments like yours, which is like, I've never tasted anything like this before. Well, it's like, unreal. There's rampant fraud in your liquid honey. And so you get it from a honeycomb, and that's why it tastes different. Like, that's what real honey tastes like.
Well, yeah.
Just shocking.
You're 100%. And I'm telling you, people are going to, this stuff is legit as all get out. I'm telling you, it's awesome. How big of an issue really is bee health, though, in the United States at this point?
Bee health and honey is a disaster. Like the more we pull a thread, the more ill will and fraud and poor beekeeping practices and poor beekeeper economics. We have 3 pillars to our business. One is honeybee health, because they pollinate 2/3 of the global food supply, which makes them important. We have beekeeper livelihoods, because without the beekeepers, we don't have the bees to pollinate. So beekeeper livelihoods is vitally important, equal as, to the honeybee health. And then we have healthy ecosystems, where we went above and beyond organic standards, because there are no organic standards in honey, as by the USDA's National Organic Program, literally says there are no standards for honey. There's a sentence. No. So we had to go above and beyond, and we're establishing regenerative, apiculture practices and standards. And we use this crazy off the charts testing. So it's honeybee health, beekeeper livelihoods, and healthy ecosystems.
All 3 are fantastic pillars to be working with on this subject.
Yeah, they work together.
When I looked at some of the scientific reviews, in 2019, there was a scientific review that estimated 40% of all the bee species are in decline. Yeah. That's just crazy. 2/3 of our food with pollinators. It's crazy.
Yeah, well, honeybees in particular, because we have a monocrop system here in the United States predominantly. And so finding native species and honeybees and managed hives versus native species and how they correlate. We have 1 million acres of research land, and we had to find that million by looking at 13 million first to make sure it was removed from agricultural uses, make sure it wasn't downwind from any pesticide spray, and then there was access roads consideration. So 13 million we looked at, and we dwindled it down to about 1 million acres we can actually do real research on with groups like UC Davis to understand what's happening to honeybees when you remove them from the kind of shitty system of pollination services.
Well, and honey yields, it's staggering. It's staggering. Well, and honey yields in California alone down 23%. Right. And as this drought continues, which is obviously going to at this point, I'm not seeing an ark floating by or driving by or parked in the marina. As the wildflower, because we don't have rain, that puts pressure on the wildflowers that don't exist anymore, which puts further pressure on the bee colonies, above and beyond what they do just for agriculture. So, I mean, this problem is just not going to go away. So let's get into this. Let's go deep. Let's get everybody framed up a little bit about, the $100 question. What is Pass the Honey?
Pass the Honey is individually portioned, regeneratively sourced honeycomb. If you've ever had honeycomb, it's the source of liquid honey. We spent many years sourcing the cleanest honeycomb in the world, and we spent time defining how to cut and pack it so it's conveniently portioned and less mess and portable. And it turned in, it's a cute little honeycomb, but we use this analogy of an iceberg. And people see the cute little cut honeycomb, but they don't see that we set regenerative standards globally with UC Davis. They don't see our 1 million acres of research. They don't see our commitment to beekeepers. They don't see our premium wages paid to beekeepers. They don't see the nuclear magnetic resonance testing we have to do to validate that it's actually being sourced from the regions we're being sourced from. There's all this work, and it turns into really a supply chain. We're a vertically integrated organization, quickly becoming fully vertically integrated.
I love it. And you guys call it snacking honey, which is a very unique term, right? I mean, it's not a term we think of, snacking carrot. We think of a snacking cookie, whatever it might be, but this is snacking honey. So talk a little bit about how you use snacking honey, how a consumer would use it, whether your kid snacks or, it's obviously a great diabetic snack. There's post-workout. I mean, there's got some great post-workout stuff. Just a broad question. Just give everybody a little update on what snacking honey is all about.
Snacking honey. We started this company looking at demographics and benefits and uses, and it works to little degrees. But if you think of it as a banana, again, we are a commodity, right? We are the source, we're the actual agricultural good in which liquid honey is derived from. So snacking honey can be used, just snack it directly. Most of our consumers just eat it, with their fingers.
That's what I do.
Spoon.
That's what I do.
And you can smear it on toast. You can pair it with charcuterie. You can put it in granola, yogurts. The more you look at it as like a banana, you can use it before workouts. You can use it after workouts. We have a large type 1 diabetic community because it has a different glycemic index. It metabolizes differently with the wax, so they can manage lows better and not have to run to get a meal, and have to push Snickers in their mouth. We have doomsday preppers because it doesn't expire. So they, stock their bunkers. It's nutritionally dense. We have a spiritual community that because of the divinity of the bees and the sacred geometry of the hexagon. This thing has gone more places than I've ever would have imagined. And again, I was looking at it like an energy bar for the first year or two. And
Right.
It's not. It's a commodity. It's a broad uses, broad demographics. You know, how can you use a banana, Todd? A bunch of ways.
A gazillion ways.
Who eats a banana? A bunch of people.
Yeah, no, that's why it's up there. Yeah, no, 100%. And it's interesting too, because, you guys are taking a unique approach because you're trying, honey and produce is not necessarily your average arena, right? Honey's in the center and it's over by the peanut butter. And, you guys are coming down on a different path. I mean, not only are you guys obviously into the deli type section for the charcuterie, like you just brought up, but I mean, it's a valuable tool in the produce department. Can you touch on that just real quick and why that matters?
Thanks for joining the Todd-versation. And now, a word from our sponsor.
Hi, I'm Karen Nardozza, President and CEO of Moxie Marketing. On behalf of all the Moxers worldwide, thanks for listening to Todd-versations and Todd Bits. At Moxie, we're known for strategic marketing and PR, unique branding and packaging, award-winning web and graphic design, and trade show experiences that generate results. Whether you're selling B2B or B2C, a farmer, processor, commodity board, retailer, food service, or somewhere else on the supply chain, we make it easier to grow your brand and your business. From avocados to zucchini and petunias to protein, we help you tell your story, stand out, and achieve your goals. Get Moxie, and together we'll celebrate your success.
It matters because our commitment to regenerative agriculture and our commitment to regenerative apiculture in particular, the roles that bees play in our food system. The consumer's aware of regenerative in the produce set more so than other parts of the store.
Right.
So there's that. Like that's what the customer's looking for, that claim. They're willing to pay a premium for that claim. But more importantly, you wouldn't merchandise apples with apple juice, right? We are the source of liquid honey. Liquid honey is a processed food item.
Right.
It's heated, it's blended, it's jarred. We are not. We are a cut pack operation. And that's what makes us the actual commodity, the actual raw ingredient. So our primary distribution is Melissa's and Indie Fruit Company.
Right.
So we use those two to leverage the produce set. For a produce buyer, we're a huge ring. We have huge consumption. We're seeing about 100 units per store per week. And we don't expire.
Right.
So to have no shrink, to have huge turn with a good penny profit, and then our marketing support, you're probably not going to get, a national spelling bee sponsor, which we are, promoting community engagement and spelling bee activations at the store level from your local honey producers. So there's all these different layers of marketing support, consumer education, unique and novel. Let's not discredit, that it is new. People haven't seen conveniently portioned honeycomb. Most consumers don't even know what honeycomb is. So to have it in a convenient portion encourages trial. I like produce more than I like grocery personally.
Yeah, well, it makes a lot. Yeah, I agree. The logic makes total sense.
If I can be candid, there's a lot of sizzle and noise in the consumer goods. In the center store, there's a lot of people beating their chest, making claims. They say authenticity, they say integrity. I've seen more authenticity and integrity working in produce the last 6 months than I've seen in over a decade in the consumer goods center store.
Well said. Yeah.
Like it is just a different, it's real. Get work done, no BS. Like you're moving the product. Here's the benefits for you. Here's the benefits for me. Here's the support I'm going to give you. It's not a popularity contest, which is really what the center store has become.
Well, there's no two ways about it. I mean, brands spend a lot of money to find existence, and in produce, you have a finite window to be relevant, right? I mean, from the time you pick it, you pack it, you ship it, you put it on the shelf, you get it to the consumer. It's a very small window to be good, and I think everybody has that sense of pride. Yeah, exactly. There's a sense of pride.
There's a humility as well, because you're also beholden to nature.
Yeah.
Where there's a lot of arrogance in the consumer goods space from a lot of money being thrown into it, which I contributed to, a decade ago. So guilty as charged, but no longer want to participate in that type of just be the loudest in the room and get a ton of doors. We have a real product, a real purpose, and we have a real value to the buyer and the retailer, and we have a real value to the customer. Yeah. So 100%. Let's just do the work. And that's where I find that personally in my alignment more as produce than it is the consumer goods side.
No, it makes total sense to me. One of the things you guys say, and I love this on your website, you call it absurdly good. I think that's just that's a great tag. It's a great tagline. You call it absurdly good. I can't even say it. Absurdly good for humans, for bees, and for beekeepers, and for the ecosystem. I know we touched on a little bit in the opening, but I want to come back around to it because I think what you guys do to lift up all of those is tremendous. So I'd just like you to give you another second to kind of dive a touch deeper, if you wouldn't mind, because I think it's important that people understand the mission, the value, the pillars, where you're coming from, because you really are wearing this brand on your heart, coming from your heart and on your shirt sleeve. I mean, it's a big deal. This is not just a fly by night. To your point, this isn't, throwing gazillions of dollars at a CPG trying to fight for that extra shelf space, right? This is a legitimate project that has such great tentacles to make positive change. So touch on that if you wouldn't mind for me.
And thank you for making that bridge. Honeycomb is unique in the sense that it is untouched by man or machine. The honeycomb and the honey in that cell in the comb was produced by a bee from a flower. Like, I don't know how much closer you can get to nature. Like, berries are washed, carrots are tumbled. Like, there's these other things, but that honey in there is pure, and like as pure as you can get. So, and then honeycomb and the beehive itself has this unique situation where it's a 2-foot square, but it has a 6-mile radius of ecological benefit where it's pollinating and creating ecological diversity. So when people ask about our sourcing, I need the purest or the most diverse ecosystems with the best tended honeybees to get the best honeycomb. Like, it is symbiotic. I'm not trying to steal from Peter to pay Paul here. Like, I just need really good ecosystem, and we need great beekeeping practices. And then that's all. Let the bees do the work. We get asked every week online, Todd, how do you get the honey in there? Which is just mind-boggling to me. I'm not sure how to answer without coming off as just like, really rude. But we just let the bees do their thing. We give them the best space, and we give them the absolute best standards we can. Yeah. And that's it. It's and again, to have that 2-foot box that has a 6-mile radius of positivity you can't get that with livestock grazing. You can't get that with, row cropping. So it's super unique. Like, honeycomb as a product is just this anomaly that I've never seen anything like it. And I'm lucky to be working in it.
So. I love it. I absolutely love it. Let's get into some of these issues, right? I'm itching to dive into this because I think people have a toe in the water. And I think people are going to be shocked by the end of this next frame up of several questions I'm going to throw at you. The first one that floored me when you told me this, and I hope it floors everybody else and we get a wake up call. Explain to me why beekeepers wouldn't sell you honeycomb to start with. Why it took you putting on your detective gear and your out kicking clods and trying to figure this thing out.
Yeah. I thought it'd be way easier to source clean honey in the United States. We could not find a commercial, so a large scale honey producer in the United States that would sell us honeycomb because they were well aware of the pesticide accumulation in the wax. Most commercial beekeepers in the United States are financially dependent on what's called pollination services. Honey is no longer a viable income stream. So what they do is they essentially become truck drivers, and they truck their bees around the United States and they pollinate monocrops, which in turns, the bees pick up pesticides that are used around the United States, and it goes in the honey and it goes in the wax. Now, once the beekeeper comes home, they can actually blend out the impurities, which is one form of adulteration in honey. And then they'll sell the liquid off to an aggregator. But the wax, you can't blend it out. It's in there. So we spent about 1.5 years searching the world to find where we could source honeycomb that didn't come hot for pesticides, antibiotics, like glyphosates, or sugar water feeding, which is another form where if a beekeeper's primary income is pollinating monocrops and honey is no longer the concern, they'll just feed their bees sugar water to keep them alive to pollinate monocrops. Honey is not the actual income anymore. So there's all these layers. You mentioned earlier, like, honey is a disaster. There's fraud coming in, fraud going out, fraud on the backside. It's the 5th way to launder money globally. Like, there's these things that you're just like, what in the world is going on? It shouldn't be that messed up. No. Yeah, when I couldn't get a honey producer in the US to sell us honeycomb at scale, it was one of those things, well, why not? And then that's what started this path of, we say we're reclaiming honey by using
That's
honeycomb.
Unreal.
to bring an item to market that is unadulterated, that's regeneratively sourced, that's conveniently formatted, encouraging trial by consumers, placing it in produce where they're looking for this type of, purpose, mission, and value, and taste, and quality, and trust. It gives us an opportunity to reinvest in the supply chain and really change economics for beekeepers too. We pay a premium for our honeycomb to then educate the producers on regenerative standards and practices. So we're doing a lot, for a little 2-3 person company, we're lifting a lot. And it's been 4 years. Like, it's taken us 4 years to get to this point to actually launch retail because of all the supply chain work we had to set up, because there's so much fraud and so much, poor business practices, beekeeping practices.
Unbelievable. So how did you manage to find it? How'd you solve it? How'd you find a clean supply?
We worked with a regenerative consultancy, and then randomly, luck, as most things happen, a friend of mine owned a French cafe, and they were importing honeycomb. And so we got their importer, and that kind of led us down another path, and we found it. And then we test it using that nuclear magnetic resonance, which is like an MRI for food, to validate there's no adulteration and there's no pesticides, antibiotics, and glyphosates. But we just lucked out. We ended up sourcing in Turkey, and we have secondary sources in Hungary we're developing, and then we have actually a North American source we're developing as well. So
you're working towards developing clean honey in America.
Yeah. We're about 18 months, 24 months away from having the first fully independent regenerative source of honeycomb and liquid honey and wax in North America. And that's what I'm working on every day now.
Even makes sense. It's like we're 2022, and now you just made a statement. It's like, who didn't think that didn't exist? But it's there. But it's not clean. Well, exactly. You now, me now too. But I mean, and to find something that's clean. So it's coming from Turkey. So it's, the issue that you're solving, right? You're building a business, but you're solving this grandiose issue. And I think what's so amazing to me is that as you've been growing this business, and I mean this with all respect, you didn't see any of this coming. Like you just, it's like all these problems just started growing and showing themselves to you. And you've been finding solutions along the way, which is unbelievable to me. So when you're getting your turkey, or you're getting your honey from Turkey, how does it kind of work? I mean, is it, you fly this stuff over? Is it, how does it get over? Is it boat over?
It's boated.
Boated, yeah.
I mean, honeycomb doesn't expire, so we don't have an expiration concern. And then as long as it isn't super hot, we do have a melting temp of 140 degrees, but.
Yeah, I'd imagine if the boat gets to 143, they got bigger issues than honey on there too.
Yeah, we're not the only person throwing our arms up in the air.
Yeah, I would think that's like, oh crap, it's a tad warm on here. Nobody's on the Lido deck at 143.
Yeah, Lido deck.
So let's get it. Again, it's just amazing to me when you think about all these things that we're touching on today. Again, not being able to source clean honeycomb at a commercial scale in the United States. Having to go, overseas like you're doing, but working diligently, which we're going to get into your Regenerative Honeycomb Initiative here in a second. But I got to get into this issue of fraud, because it is 70% of the honey is basically what we're talking about, that has in some way can be, fraudulent. And and what's amazing to me, it's number 5 on the hit list for money laundering, honey business. Yeah. The honey business, money laundering. I mean, I could think of The Godfather with the olive oil. Like, okay, I could see that, but now we're talking honey.
Well, olive oil is number 1.
Yeah, I know it is. Well,
yeah, so
they had a head start.
Yeah,
it is crazy. So, how big is fraud in the honey business? I mean, globally.
Well, globally, 70% of all liquid honey has been adulterated in some manner, and that's the fraud.
So, talk a little bit about. So, you can add additives. Sugars?
Predominantly, it's blending and heating. So blending, so you'll take 1 barrel of pure honey and you'll blend in corn syrup, rice syrup, any other type of processed syrup or sugar. And then you obviously cut it in, and then you quadruple, if not tenfold, your yield. They cut it like drugs. The other is, once that happens, they'll heat it, and then it muddies the sources. So traditional testing equipment can't tell the difference. That's why we had to go to these extreme lengths of nuclear magnetic resonance, which is the highest level of food testing you can possibly get currently, and it's not cheap. So the other forms of adulteration is the sugar water feeding. So you're getting a fraudulent input. So it's not pollen produced honey. So you're lacking the nutritional density.
Right.
Yeah. So that's like the sugar water feeding is a function of beekeeper livelihoods, because honey fraud has caused so much downward pressure on the price of liquid honey that beekeepers can't make money on honey. So that's when then the pollination services comes in, and that's how they're sustaining themselves as a livelihood. But pollination services is poor beekeeping practices and is detrimental to hive health. So it's like, how do you re-educate beekeepers? One, make the consumer aware that honey fraud's a thing. Many consumers don't know this. Then they don't know what honeycomb is or how to use it. So like, we have to educate on all these levels to finally just say, no, we're just honeycomb. We're what bees do. Like, it is a simple product, but incredibly complex to bring it to market. More complex than I ever would have imagined. I wouldn't have done it if I would have known.
So if with the technology, and I want to come back to this, with the technology that you talked about, being able to look at, kind of the DNA of what honey is. If these guys mess with the honey, they add a little splash of this, a little sprig of that, whatever it might be, that actually affects the ability to even fully understand or be transparent to what this honey even is at that point.
Explain the question again.
Well, I mean, if they're adding things into the pure honey, and they're all, what the fraud is kind of the basis of all that, if we get to a better word, you really can't go back once they do that and really figure out the genesis of the honey. They've altered, right? So they've altered. So if you want to fact find, if you want to really know the source of your food, that's not going to happen at that point. That's where I was trying to get to.
The only honey I can trust personally, like I work in honey, the only honey I trust is from a comb, because it hasn't been heated, it hasn't been blended. But most liquid honeys are coming from 5 to 10 different sources right now. Like, it's this huge blending operations.
Wow.
So you're not getting any sort of nutritional benefits from any specific region. And then the fact that there's processed sugars in it is negating it. So yeah, there's an irony that honeycomb is so nutritionally dense, or honey.
Right.
But yet it's so fraudulent that the consumer is not getting nutritional density, which is really where I started. So kind of how I started the company was I was making honey lemon ginger teas, and I was trying to heal myself because I was getting sick. I was putting liquid honey in, and I knew liquid honey was fraudulent. I thought, well, here I'm trying to get healthy, and I'm putting this garbage, highly suspect item. Why don't I just put the honeycomb in? Because that way I know it's not been heated or blended. But then if you ever bought honeycomb, it's like in this big brick, and it brought ants into the house, and then I put it in the fridge, and it was inedible after it went into the fridge because it was like a brick. Yeah. And that's kind of where it was like, well, why isn't the honeycomb just in a convenient format? Right. Well, and that was what started the whole process, was knowing I was putting fraudulent liquid into my system, trying to get healthy. Sure. One of the nutritional benefits, and then the mess of an inconvenience of honeycomb, even though it was the purest form.
Unbelievable. I mean, it's mind blowing to me to think about fraud in such an important, I guess fraud's everywhere in our world today, but in a lot of ways, but in something so important as insect health, bees, food supply, our own personal health. It's just mind blowing to me to think of the stats that you've thrown out. 70%, number 5 on the money laundering. It's sad. It's so just sad. I think people are going to be blown away by this. I think people are going to take a real hard look in their own pantries and go, what the hell is this actually? And maybe it's time for me to send an email and ask that question a little bit deeper of the manufacturers. Talk a little bit.
Will come back to us and they'll say, well, I only buy the expensive honey. It's like, well, expensive honey is even more questionable than the cheap honey, because if you're a fraudster, you're not going to knock off cheap honey. You're going to knock off the expensive stuff. So, for example, Manuka honey gets a lot of exposure. Yeah. Trader Joe's sells more Manuka honey itself, one retailer, than is exported annually out of New Zealand. So where does the rest of the volumes come? How does Costco have Manuka honey? How does 7-Eleven, have Manuka honey? So it's like there's a math equation all of a sudden where you have this high dollar, honey that has all these nutritional benefits, but it's also even more fraudulent because it's a high ticket item. So, well, it's everywhere you turn, there's some sort of roadblock or lack of education. And that's why being a simple or individually portioned cut of honeycomb, and it shouldn't be that hard to sell it to the consumer. But once they taste it, they get it. Like you had one bite and you're like, okay, I get it.
Oh yeah, 100%. If you've never had this, it will change. It will 100% change your opinion on whatever honey's in your house today. Guaranteed.
Love it.
Guaranteed. It's amazing. I mean, it's just really, and I think probably too, some of it is because I've got deep into it and I'm getting what you're saying. We've talked about all these things we're covering here on the broadcast. So I think maybe my senses are a little more elevated when I start to go, Jesus Christ, this is just crazy. We're not living like this every day. It's just nuts. Let's talk about organic honey a little bit, because there are no standards,
or the lack thereof. Yes.
Or lack. Well, I was trying to be kind, but there are no organic standards for honey. Why do you think that is?
Well, you can't qualify the 6 mile radius that a bee flies.
Right.
And there's also pesticide drift. So, the fact we looked at 13 million acres and then had to identify what was adjacent to industrial agricultural inputs, AKA pesticides, and then what was downwind, it just immediately takes a whole bunch of acreage off the table. So
it's amazing to think that they are looking at it from that 6 mile radius. It's amazing to think that we'd have to control
organic practices are based on crop. So the NOP, the National Organic Program, is from the USDA, is based on crop practices. Bees aren't a crop; they're livestock technically. So it's like that. It just doesn't fit the box.
Well, and they're an uncontrolled livestock, right?
Yeah,
where a cow, you know where a cow is. It's over there.
Yeah.
But a bee, I mean, you could have a bee that started, in my neighborhood, and it could be 2 zip codes over and swing back home, after it's done.
2 farms over could be spraying, and the wind could come over, and all of a sudden, boom, you got it, in your flowers. So
it's amazing. It's a tough one, and I don't think we're ever going to see it happen unless I don't see how we're ever going to find ourselves truly getting organic honey. I just don't, I don't either.
We have a lot of acreage.
Maybe you can. I mean, but it'd be tough. It'd be a worthy project. Are you guys doing anything to remedy the issue? Are you kicking it around?
We went above and beyond organic, and we defined what regenerative apiculture, which apiculture is beekeeping. So we worked with UC Davis, and we developed a whole continuum on standards and practices and testing protocols for what we consider regenerative honeycomb or honey.
Which is your honeycomb initiative. Let's get into it. Yeah, talk about it.
Yeah, so we have the Regenerative Honeycomb Initiative, which is our effort to produce and source regenerative comb in the United States. And that's an acreage. So we work with landowners, we work with academic institutions, we work with other stakeholders. So other people and consumer brands that are using liquid honey or the wax. That's beverages, bars, cosmetics. So retailers as well. People are starting to understand that pollinators are vital, and the honeybees in particular are vital to 70% of the food we eat. So that is an effort to stabilize beekeeping and honeybee health in the United States. And it starts with 1 million acres. Our goal is 7 million acres. We're working with indigenous nations. We're working with large timber landowners, trying to find kind of marginalized communities as well to bring skills and income to those groups to produce honey. So again, that weird 2 foot, like we can produce honey in the swamps of Mississippi. We can put it on a barge, and we can still pollinate, where you can't put livestock in the swamps. You can't do row cropping in the swamps. So we have a little bit of flexibility in the sense that bees fly, so we can produce in different manners.
Right. I love it. So how's the initiative work? I mean, give me, what's your goal? And obviously you want to get to your 7 million. You're going to have to probably go through 50 million to get to 7 at this rate. I mean, really, honestly, let's face 50 million, million acres is a lot of ground. Your biggest farmers, just for example, and I'll get the number fairly close. Your biggest farmers in California that are doing, vegetable, they're maybe a little over 100,000 acres.
Yep.
Right. And that's the big boys. So you can imagine what 1 million's got to be. That's a big, big chunk of land. So how does the process work? I mean, how does this initiative come about? Just kind of give us your goals, I think, at the end, which what I'd like to hear is, where do you want to see this go to?
The end game is to produce regenerative honeycomb in the United States. And stabilize beekeeper livelihoods. But the stage is to get there. We have a 3-year research cycle. So it's understanding, when we put a hive on a parcel of land, what the benefits of managed hives and native species, how they interact, where they compete, where they don't compete. So we don't want to throw off the ecosystem, right? So if you introduce a managed hive into a native ecosystem, there are native pollinators you have to consider. So first is just where those interact and how they interact. And then what do those two do from an ecological diversity perspective? Are we regenerating landscapes? Are we healing the earth? And then, what does the honey taste like? If it's all pine and it doesn't taste good, then we're not doing much for our production, but we are doing something to heal the earth. Right. So one of the other kind of tangent research projects we're doing is one of our partners, our landowner partners, lost about 100,000 acres in a forest fire recently, and actually placing hives along the fire line to pull living forest into the actual burnt forest, and then identifying through our nuclear magnetic resonance testing what pioneer species of forage come back first to help to regenerate the landscape. quicker.
Wow.
So there's all these different funky things that we're able to do. And that's why we have UC Davis involved. It's why we have MIT, NASA involved in our research component. They all have different kind of ideas as to how they want to understand honeybees in particular. And we are the only ones that have this kind of large parcel of land that isn't part of the pollination services system. It's kind of shitty business system.
It is amazing to me to hear another story about Mother Nature and the importance of protecting her, right? And we do so much. I say it all the time, and I believe it wholeheartedly. We have to work with Mother Nature, not against her. We're never going to be here.
Yeah,
so we have to stop acting
100%.
like it, right? We try to alter, we try to do things, we try to cut corners, we try to edit, splice, dice, whatever the hell you want to call it. And at the end of the day, she's always going to win. And she has a bigger plan than we can conceive of. She's been doing it a long time. She's probably Mother Nature's probably the most seasoned employee on the planet today, right? She's been doing it a lot longer than anybody else has been standing here. And, it's amazing to me how hard we have to work with her sometimes. The roadmap has already been laid out. The bees are on this planet for a reason. The bees have a purpose like every other insect. We think about insect extinction, and I don't think we realize that if we lose the insects, we're right behind them, folks. It's how this is going to play out. And it's so important that we lean back into this. But when you talk about, putting hives on the front line of a fire, after the fact, to see what ends up happening, that's what Mother Nature's did forever, right? And to be able to
give it a little bit of a boost.
It's unbelievable.
Leg up if we can. But then obviously monitoring to make sure we're not screwing things up. And that's what it all comes back to intention, right? Like, it bothers me, back to our CPG conversation of all the noise, we're the best bar, we're the best this. The work we're doing, we're 4 years in, and I don't have any intention of selling this company. I'll say it here, I've said it elsewhere. This is a long journey, and it's about being intentional with what we do. Like, we have to be aware of the potential positives and negatives and make the best decisions we can. And if we can't produce honey on this acreage, we can't produce honey on this acreage, which is totally fine. Like, I'm okay with that outcome.
Right.
Because there are other places to produce, but I think it's a valuable endeavor to explore. And if we can find other partners that have ancillary benefits, such as rehabilitating fire ravaged landscape, that's a cool one. So I don't know. The work's boring. It's long, but
I don't think the work's boring, dude. I'm gonna let you get away with that. I don't think it. Look, you're walking a path that nobody else
doesn't make a
walking.
good TikTok. Let's just say that.
I don't make a good TikTok, so I can relate to that. But at the end of the day, you're walking a path that not many folks are walking. You're walking a path that folks have decided it's too complicated to walk, so we're going to cheat our way around it.
I agree.
Right. And you're in for the long game, which is completely respectable, which is why I dig this brand so much, which is why, hooking up with you and getting you on this broadcast to tell this message is so important to me and to our team here, because it is mind-boggling that we're even having this conversation in some ways. I mean, I'm glad that we are, and I'm glad it's you, but I mean, at the end of the day, it's like, some of these things are just, when we sit back and go, God, I didn't know that was happening. Man, we just can't be complacent anymore when it comes to our food system and our planet. It's going to kick our ass. And it's doing it now.
Thanks for joining the Todd-versation. And now, a word from our sponsor.
Hi, I'm Karen Nardotza, President and CEO of Moxie Marketing. On behalf of all the Moxers worldwide, thanks for listening to Todd-versations and Todd Bits. At Moxie, we're known for strategic marketing and PR, unique branding and packaging, award-winning web and graphic design, and trade show experiences that generate results. Whether you're selling B2B or B2C, a farmer, processor, commodity board, retailer, food service, or somewhere else on the supply chain, we make it easier to grow your brand and your business. From avocados to zucchini and petunias to protein, we help you tell your story, stand out, and achieve your goals. Get Moxie, and together we'll celebrate your success.
There's a complacency conversation around, you're 100% correct. It's too difficult. It's too complex. And how do I explain this to potential investors, right? Like, there's a lot. We're a vertically integrated global commodity. Like, that's what we are. And we have all these other little tangents. But the lift I'm hoping with your audience is that we consistently get railroaded into grocery buyers because they hear honey and they think liquid. And everything we're doing, we're talking about here is that we are not liquid. Liquid is the problem. That honey bear is the bastard that caused all this. He's, the honey bear has taught the consumer that honey should be cheap. And real nutritional value in honey isn't cheap. It comes at, and now that cheap honey has its own cost, which is declining populations, pushing beekeepers out of business. So my hope here with Todd-versations is that we'll get the grocery buyers or produce buyers understand, like, this is not a grocery item. Back to my original statement, you wouldn't merchandise apples next to apple juice. Apple juice is the processed byproduct of the actual commodity.
Right.
We are an agricultural good, a cut pack, no different from a berry, a carrot. So that's what I'm hoping. And why we're, I'm stoked to be here with you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. But you're right. You know what, brother? I'll tell you right now, cheap has a hidden cost, and we have to start to recognize that. Whether it's our healthcare, no matter what it is, cheap has a hidden cost, and it is dangerous when we don't look at stuff like that. It is dangerous when, in my mind, and I'm preach this from the pulpit as much as I possibly can. We have put too much energy into making food cheap at the expense of our health and our planet. Oh, for sure. I'm all about, and this has nothing to do with economics. I got it. I'm not arguing that point. My point is that we just cannot keep trying to take something and will it, get it down to nothing and still call it the same thing that it should be. It's just stupid, right? It's killing us. And, your example of what you're talking about in the honey business is exactly to that point. Cheap has a hidden cost. And to your point about, honey that's out there in the American consumer, we got to stop to ask questions. We're not going to survive on a 79-cent box of mac and cheese on this world. We're just not. We've got to find common sense, because investing in our food is a positive cost, man. It's what you're doing is a positive cost.
If a consumer knew that cheap honey was essentially corn syrup, and they might they would never buy it, but they don't know.
No.
So
they're going to now.
Part of it is they put a honeycomb in your mouth and it tastes different, because that's what real pollen produced honey tastes like. Like honey is complex. It's very similar to wine in that sense. Yeah. Or depending on where it comes from, it has terroir, it has flavor and taste and color varieties. Like honey should not be all the same color. It shouldn't taste all the same. That's not how nature works. So
no, well, you've got 4 seasons.
Yes. Well, the consumer understands it in wine, but how do you bring wine to honey? Because we've had such this, fraudulent landscape. And that's where, ta-da, there you go.
All right. But you bring this, how you bring, honey to wine? You put this on the charcuterie plate when you're sitting out on the back porch having wine on a Saturday afternoon, and this will blow your mind. Guaranteed. Let's talk a little bit, if we can. I want to talk about, you're leading the charge in so many ways. I mean, we've touched on them, we've framed them up. We got people thinking, I guarantee people's heads are spinning a little bit. But, you're working with your regenerative agriculture working group. Talk about that and why that matters so much right now, because that's a big deal that you're doing.
Yes. So part of the Regenerative Honeycomb Initiative, or RHI, was it couldn't be just us. We can't do this alone, nor do I intend to, right? So the working group it's a venue. It's a way for other stakeholders to contribute to the conversation. Now, if that's academic institutions, if it's buyers of liquid honey, if it's buyers of wax, if it's landowner partners, if it's retailers, it's a way to get everyone around the table and say, how do we solve this problem for honey? Right. Now, we went and did our own internal Q&A, and that's where we set the regenerative standards, but we also peer review them, right? Like we share it with the other group and say, is this on or off? Like, how are we doing? How do we improve upon these apiculture standards? How do we educate beekeepers to adopt these standards so we can buy our comb from them? Because a lot of beekeepers we can't buy from a lot of beekeepers because there's the sugar water feeding or the pollination services. Right. So it's like, how do you create that economic incentive for them? Well, that's where the working group comes together, and it's a consolidated, essentially a big buying co-op, to say, look, if we can get beekeepers to produce to these standards, and we can validate it using third-party testing that it is regeneratively sourced and it meets these standards and practices, we now have a reason for beekeepers to adopt new standards and practices. So nothing happens in a vacuum, right? So was really like, I can build all the land use and all the supply chain as possible, but without a demand, there's really no reason for a beekeeper to adopt new practices.
So how do people get involved? How do people get involved in the working group? I mean, I'm imagining that you've got beekeepers now that let me back up. I'm gonna start over. I imagine you got people calling you now going, holy shit, what are you up to? First off,
Yeah.
how do we get involved? So how do people get involved with specifically with this working group?
Go to the website. It's just regenerativeapiculture.org, I think. Google it. Yeah, if you just Google Regenerative Apiculture Working Group or Regenerative Honey Working Group, either of those will pop up. And there's a sign up form. And then we hold meetings once a month usually, and sometimes they're quarterly. And it just depends on, it's just still forming. So it's still forming. So we're getting our.
Is it open to everybody? Open to everybody?
Open to
I mean, if a consumer wants to get on, if a mom, a
100%.
Facebook mom wants to get on there,
100%.
folks, call to action. Let's go. Get involved. Get better understanding. And, because I believe this is a topic that needs to get down into the community level of understanding of, what is your parent group doing? What is your PTA meeting talking about? Yeah, you're talking about some wild stuff. Is anybody talking about bee health? Is anybody teaching the kids about bees and the importance of what we got going on and why we can make a difference? I mean, I think it's incredibly impactful. Incredibly impactful.
Educational programs. We're a sponsor of the National Spelling Bee on a regional basis. I'm trying to become a national sponsor, but educating students around pollinators, our food system, teaching them the words. That's a campaign that I would love to see come together in the next 2 to 3 years.
Well, I would too.
Elementary schools.
Dude, you got anything we can do to help you do that? We're on board. I mean, there's a lot of great people that have been a part of this broadcast, people coming on this broadcast that haven't shown yet that are in the, in the wings. And we'd love to put you in contact and start those conversations. Because I firmly believe that if we're going to make a difference for this planet, 2 things, one of which we need to plant a whole lot of trees to work on getting rid of some of these greenhouse gases. And 2, we need to inform these kids what's really the truth is. And we need to change this conversation and for the better. Because I'm telling you, we may not see it so much, but we will see it if we invest in it now downstream with these kids as we get these next generations coming up that are asking the tough questions like we're talking about today. Because I guarantee you, I could probably go up my street right now and knock on every door and ask people what they think, how much fraud's in the honey business, and people will not even come close to the right answer. They won't even have a ballpark clue about additives into honey. They'll just look at what they have, and if they have it, they have it. It's nuts. It's just nuts. I love it. Well,
honey is a disaster.
It is a disaster. It really is. That's when it's so funny because I think about that. You said it the first time you and I talked. You actually said that. I'm like, right? And it's like now, and after our whatever it was, we got back and forth. It's like, holy shit, he's right. It is kind of a disaster. Yeah. This is a mess. One of the things I want to make sure that people realize is that you've got the individual packets, you do stuff in food service, you got retail caddies out there, you got a myriad of stuff that people can work with. It's all on the website to see.
Yep.
It's pretty transparent. So retailers, wholesalers, food service, get online, give Douglas a call, talk about honey health, because this is a great topic for the retailers to lean into. You want to talk about regenerative ag, you want to do something bigger and have a conversation that's uplifting to your consumers. Let's go tackle this one.
Well, that's also, I'm going to give you some extra firepower here. And anybody
I need it. I'm getting ready to eat this. I don't need any firepower.
Anybody can email me at Douglas@PassTheHoney. But the retail numbers on this thing, because it's something entirely new, people are curious, and it is a beautiful product because you can see it in the background, it's glistening. We have no expiration. So for a produce buyer to take something that takes, it's maybe like half a square foot, we do 100 units per store per week at our actually 180 at our highest retailer, but we're averaging about 100 units per week. To have something that has that kind of velocity and a very large penny profit, that's educating your consumers, that doesn't expire, it's a game changer for the 100%. Produce set. It's a shrink buster, essentially.
Yeah. Well, and again, and I think, you go for that impulse buy, you go for that change, you go for that snack, you go for something that's different. I love it in the produce department because, to your point, it goes with everything.
We also have a 60% returning customer. So it isn't just that impulse buy of like, that's cute. To your point, it's cute. I get it. We'll say, okay, that's interesting. Right. Let me try it. I'll take a flyer on this thing. They taste it. It's like, whoa, what's that? The taste brings them back. Then usually they'll look us up and then they realize the purpose of the company. And that's what creates that lifetime customer. I mean, a 60% returning customer is insane.
Yeah, for sure it is. I mean, that's not, who wouldn't love that? Right.
It's sticky.
I like that. I like that. But, you said something I think is key, and we haven't used the word yet today, and I'm going to bring it back up, is the word purpose. And that's what I see happening with you. That's what I taken from my path, walking with you a little bit, our journey, hanging out, talking a little bit together and spending time with you even today is that you're on a purpose right now that's far greater than I think you even see it. Like you're on this purpose-driven path right now that don't know where it's going to take you, but it's going to be far greater probably than what you can even imagine if I was guessing. So kudos to you, for walking. That's a big step, dude. I mean, you're in uncharted water. You're taking on the fifth biggest, money laundering deal. There's some people that aren't going to like what you have to say, I guarantee it, but it needs to be said.
That's funny you say that. Yes. There are people that don't like change. It's working for some right now, and it's not working for the consumer. It's not working for us. So,
well, it's not working for the planet. Let's it's not working for the food. It's not working for the planet. We've got to start to recognize that, we've got to be harder on ourselves about what we're doing in some of these instances. And we've got to make some tough choices. We can't press the easy button all the time. It's kicking our ass. It really is. So what's next? What's next for you guys? What's on the horizon besides, me starting to eat this honeycomb here and going to get my,
The next, we're launching with Melissa's and Indie Fruit Company. So we're getting retailer commitments, and we're launching into produce sets. We're avoiding grocery. Like, I'm not going to list in grocery. So it doesn't make sense for us. Not with the purpose that we discussed, and not with the commodity that we are. So there's a lot of back and forth. We kind of get railroaded into, I don't buy honey. Well, we're not honey, we're honeycomb. And really delineating between that and the processed fraudulent one that's center store. So my focus is launching retail accounts. If there's produce buyers or even, deli, charcuterie, we'll go through there because that's where the customer is aware of it. And then a vertical integration. We have beekeepers in the Yucatan down in Mexico that we are going to start investing in, re-educating them and building facilities for. And I really want to bring that stability to their income stream or their income.
I love it. Dude, this is sick, dude. It's just sick. I mean, it's unbelievably good. I mean, I'm telling you, it's unlike
anything. Is it absurdly good?
God bless my chops. I was just getting ready to say that. You just totally ruined it for me.
It is our tagline.
I was working it in. No, it's delicious. I'm telling you, this stuff is fantastic. It's going to blow people away because I don't think they've ever had anything like this. I think it's going to be really surprising to folks.
That tagline, it's absurdly good, came from a comment we made in an operations meeting. And it's because I said, we have to go to these absurd lengths because honey is so fraudulent. Like, we shouldn't have to do this to find clean honeycomb in the United States. But yet here we are. Yeah. And it's like, well, it's absurdly good. And it's like, well, that's absurdly good because back to banana, we don't have a demographic. We can't say, look, athlete, it's good for your muscles before a workout. It's just, that's too pigeonholed for us. We are a broad audience commodity. Yeah. So it's absurdly good. It's absurdly good for the bees. It's absurdly good for the beekeepers. It's absurdly good for the environment. It's absurdly good for workouts. It's absurdly good for charcuterie. It starts to give us that latitude to speak to broad audience and uses. And it's absurdly good. It's off the charts good. And that's what real honey should have been. We shouldn't have to be here, but we are. So, yeah, well, you know what? And thank God we are. Thank God we have you leading charge and having this conversation and bringing it to the people and make them understand that this is a valuable conversation. You're going to help bring it to the people through your produce audience. Well, we're going to do that. We're going to do more than that, man. We get this thing gets listened to in about 43 countries. So we're going to make sure the world gets a chance to hear it. But and the fact you're working with Melissa and Peter and his kids down there in LA, and you got Daniel and the Indie Fruit guys in Indianapolis. Yep. I mean, you've got two great partners out there that get it. You got guys that have a great perspective and a long tenure of understanding what this business 100%. Is. And they see and I guarantee you, they both ate this one. Holy shit. That was an epiphany moment to the two of them, if I was guessing. I like the no shrink and the penny profit isn't bad either. Yeah. Well, I get that part of it too, but there's something to be said about, if people aren't, if it's not any good, it doesn't matter how much money you make because nobody's going to buy 100%. It. This is right. This is going to be something people are going to come back to. Your point, 60% of people are coming back. And, I bet that number continues. I bet that number doesn't waver. If not, it's probably going to increase. Pretty stable for 4 years going. It's been pretty. Yeah. Consistent. I mean, like I said, I'm just sitting here. This stuff is just nuts, man. I love it. This is one of my, newest favorite items of 2022, to say the least. I mean, I'm so enlightened by what you're doing. I'm encouraged by what you're doing. I'm proud of what you're doing. And I love the purpose behind it. And I love the passion that you have and the way you speak about it in such an open-minded mannerism. It's refreshing, dude. I really appreciate you being here today and hanging out with me. I really do. Well, thank you for giving us the opportunity. It's totally a big story to tell. It's a hell of a big story to tell. And hopefully we got people, revved up a little bit. And again, go look in your cupboard and ask a question. Open invitation to come back. We want a progress report. I want to know what's going on with the Honeycomb Initiative. I want to know how things are going.
Let's get it up on the board. Let's make sure that people are up to date. And again, get involved. Go to the website, sign up, be a part of these working groups. Listen, learn, share that information through your social channels. Get people involved. Give this stuff a shout. Give me a call. I'll come over and have it with you. I dig this stuff.
I love it, Todd.
Cool. Douglas, I appreciate you very much. Thanks for being here and hanging out with us. I really do appreciate it. And
Thank you.
keep kicking ass, buddy. Don't let anybody take down in. You know, when the mob comes after you, give me a call. I know people too. So
Let's hope it doesn't. It is a possibility, but yeah, let's hope it doesn't.
I love it. Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for being a part of this conversation today. Thank you for thinking this through a little bit. I hope we challenged you. That's what this broadcast is all about. It's about uplifting ideas and the brands and the people that are behind them and throwing stuff out there that needs these conversations. And I'm telling you, this conversation is so damn important. So please get online, be supportive, check it out. Tell your retailers you want to carry it. Reach out on every avenue, get in the produce departments. Let's get this stuff rolling. Let's show these kids how good this stuff is, and let's change this country for the better. So on behalf of everybody here, don't forget, check us out on social media. That's where the cool kids are. That's where we hang out. We'll see you on Todd-versations, Todd Bits, YouTube, wherever the hell we live. We're there. And come share your story with us. Just like Douglas did. This is a big story to share, and I'm glad we got the opportunity to do it. So take care of each other, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you.